You are at your kitchen, in the store, at the office, and this dreadful scene unfolds. Either you or someone you're with is completely out of control. We're talking sobbing, screaming, arms flailing, heart pounding, face flushed, the whole shebang. What is it that we tend to do instinctively? We tend to say things, right, like, calm down. What's your problem? What's wrong with you? The worst one. Um, be reasonable. Think about what you're doing. There's a big problem with these types of interventions, which is they don't work. Why don't they work? I'll explain in a little bit. But first, what does work? What works is a sensory intervention, specifically my favorite, bilateral stimulation. What do I mean by that? We activate, we engage the senses on both sides of the body, right and left, ideally in an alternating rhythmic motion. So, what does that look like? We are talking about something like running. We're talking about drumming. We're talking about, with the person's permission, rocking them gently from side to side. We're even talking about the butterfly hug, where we can tap the cross shoulder in this way. We can say to the person, let's go for a short walk, and do that. Any of those sensory interventions, bilateral stimulation interventions, if you do them for 5 to 10 minutes, you are most likely going to see that out of control person calm down and get back much more to their base state. At which point you can talk to them, reason with them, and all is good. So, how does that work? What is actually happening in the brain when a person is this escalated or this triggered? And why does bilateral stimulation work? So, the way that Dr. Bruce Perry, who pioneered the neurosequential model, the way he describes it, is that when a person, especially people, if you think about it, with traumatic memories, when they get triggered, or when we get triggered, or when we are dealing with a very volatile content in our mind and we get this out of control, the part of the brain that can be reasoned with, the reasonable part, the one that makes sensible decisions, that one that calculates long-term consequences for our actions, that part of the brain goes offline. It just goes dark, shut down. What does light up like a Christmas tree is the more primitive part of the brain, the part that we refer to as the sensory, sometimes referred to as the reptilian part of the brain. So when we are in that escalated state, that part of the brain that is primitive takes over and hijacks us. That part is responsible for survival. It's responsible for knee-jerk reactions, for fight, flight, freeze, for automatic physiological functions like heart rate and blood pressure. So the person in that state, it's not that they choose not to be reasonable, they're literally temporarily disconnected because they're hijacked in the primitive brain state and they're disconnected from the more reasoning part of the brain. So when we use bilateral stimulation, what happens? When we activate both sides of the body, we're also activating the right and left hemispheres of the brain. That allows information that is sort of stuck in a loop in either hemisphere to cross over through the midline of the brain. There's an organ called the corpus callosum. Once information crosses over, it allows the brain to take that information, that volatile content or traumatic memory, and reprocess it and tuck it away more effectively in a way that causes less reactivity, less high emotions. And that allows those primitive brain structures to calm down. And then it allows the prefrontal cortex, the reasoning part, to go back online. Then, when the person is in an integrated state and they're calmed down, then it is the time to relate to them, to reason with them, and talk with them. Cautionary note: if a person is imminent danger to themselves or others, or under the influence, if in doubt, call 911. Take them to a crisis center, because they most likely need professional stabilization. But for all the other thousands of times in our lives when we or someone we are with is out of control, the sensory intervention for the sensory brain, bilateral stimulation, is usually the most helpful thing to do. So, as usual, if you enjoy this content, remember to press the like key, subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Take care.